So the other day I was watching a Lacey Green video. I say the other day, but what I really mean is like several months ago. On toxic masculinity. Well, I don't want to spend this video chatting about toxic masculinity. I do want to speak on toxic femininity. Because in this video, Lacey Green asked her boyfriend, Crecentwing, his thoughts on toxic femininity. First, she asked him, which is a joke of a question, I imagine, what were her toxic femininity levels? And then she asked him for an example of toxic femininity. I'm going to play that for you now.
Babe, what are my toxic femininity levels like right now?
What are your toxic femininity levels?
Where are they at, like, roughly?
What scale are we using? Is this like a hot pepper scale?
1 to 10.
Okay. I don't know, I guess, I'm just gonna guess, like, even? 5?
What? I'm like halfway all the way to toxic?
Yeah, halfway is default.
Okay, so
halfway is really like the like where everybody starts. If there is a toxic masculinity, then there must be a toxic femininity because I'm an egalitarian.
Okay, so what is it then?
2 hours later.
Anything that could be deemed toxic femininity, and I say that having no love for the term, would be, in my opinion, something like, I am to be protected at all costs, so when I'm stopped by a police officer, or when I am busted at a traffic stop, I can just fucking slap my arms at the cop, and it's totally fine because they're not going to do anything.
So, like, the presumption of...
The presumption of innocence, which isn't wrong, necessarily. But it's the sense that, like...
It's wrong when it comes at the expense of protecting other people.
Right.
There's a couple of things that I find interesting here. One, the fact that Chris could not really articulate himself very well. I mean, he said the presumption of innocence, but that is actually a privilege granted to us, or maybe a right granted to us by the American legal system. Americal? The fuck is a miracle? What I think Chris Reagan was trying to say is, because, for lack of a better word, there really isn't a word, at least that I can think of to my knowledge right now, that encapsulates what is basically the manipulative arrogance or spoiled rotten nature that women have, or some women have, due to the fact that they're attractive, or due to the fact that they're women. And thus, because they feel the status of being a woman, being that is, they are elevated because, you know, they have wombs and they carry children, and men have an instinctual desire to protect them, that they then manipulate this desire to their advantage. I don't really know if there's a specific word to encapsulate that, which is probably why Chris had such a tough time articulating it, but I'm pretty sure that's what he meant. Not really the presumption of innocence. Again, if you're American, you're granted that, or at least you're supposed to be. But I find it interesting that that was his example of toxic femininity, and the fact that there weren't more. Because I can think of several examples of toxic femininity right off the top of my head, and that's what I'm going to do right now, actually. Starting off with one example of toxic femininity you would think would be really easy to call out, and that is gold diggers. You know, I mean, you hear a lot about toxic masculinity and what it means to be a man and how it's all negative and terrible and bad, but let's talk about, again, all the really, really nasty ways femininity can manifest itself. And gold digging is probably one of the most extreme examples of a negative female trait, and that is being hypergamy. Hypergamy as a desire or as an instinct is actually not something I think is silly. In fact, I think the very interesting thing about hypergamy in our current society, at least in America, is that it's actually not being used correctly, if you can use an instinct correctly. But I've always had this opinion of hypergamy, and that being that women should be hypergamous. Women should try to seek the best man that they could get, considering the fact that we're talking about creating new people. Their desire to find people to mate with that are, you know, good or, you know, are healthy is totally reasonable. The desire of finding a man who is financially stable, again, is reasonable. But here's where the toxicity comes from. When you take an instinct that is supposed to be for your children and remove the children from the equation, all you have left is yourself. And when you become selfish and turn that hypergamy inward, You look for a man to siphon resources off of in order to get what you want. In other words, you become a fucking parasite. And that's just the best way to put it. You're a parasite. You're not using to take his resources and try to build a home and stable environment for your children. You're using it to accrue a bunch of material things that just make you feel good about you. And that's it. And that is incredibly toxic. You would think that that would probably be one of the easiest examples of toxic femininity Chris Reagan could come up with, but he didn't. And maybe it's because he didn't because he was like on the fly, or maybe Lazy Green caught him off guard, but I don't know. I just thought if there was anything he was going to use, it would be that one. I mean, using someone solely so you can get things from them is pretty manipulative and nasty. I don't really think there's any way you could put a positive spin on being a gold digger. Now, another really great example of toxic femininity that we see exude itself a lot, especially in social media, is the blatant desire to be really, really, really friggin' attractive. If men have a problem with braggadocio and their pride and arrogance in being Mr. Macho Man, then women have a gigantic issue with trying to look really beautiful on Instagram or just anywhere on the internet, really. Shoot, even like conservative ladies who are supposed to be modest, they still ain't got no trouble showing their cleavage. I tell you what, they still ain't got no trouble, putting out the push-up bras and, giving us a good old eyeful. Not that I'm complaining. Not that I am complaining at all. I'm just saying, if braggadocio is a toxically masculine trait in men, trying to be an incredibly sexy lady with a big ass on Instagram was pretty friggin' toxic, at least to me. I mean, trying to get all of your validation and self-worth simply because you are good looking certainly does not do anything for anybody. And going to the extreme lengths that a lot of young ladies go through in order to obtain these really good looks is, again, just kind of toxic in numerous ways. Toxic to your body, seeing as there's lots of women that go through plastic surgery for their breast augmentation, butt augmentation, facial augmentation, excuse me please. You're literally spending thousands of dollars for just so people think you look good. It's literally just purely aesthetically. $3,500 for some fake breasts that cannot nourish your children. I mean, there are lots of ways of which you could waste money, but I can think of no better waste than that. Better? I don't even think better should have been the word to use there. Getting a really big butt, again, does not really help you in any regard at all, other than attracting usually black and Mexican men to you. That's kind of the only thing you get out of having a big butt. Not really many benefits there, other than people think you're sexually attractive, and even then you need a narrow waist for that usually. But it's not really hard for most women to have a narrow waist. It's kind of a defining feature for a lot of them. Anyhow, and again, facial reconstruction, I guess that's a lot more useful considering the fact that people will look at you more often. But again, instead of gaining the confidence to accept your face as is, you spend lots of money to change the structure. Is not really a healthy way of looking at your self-image, because a lot of people that get into plastic surgery, because they have a lot of body dysmorphia problems to begin with, they just end up getting caught in a cycle of constantly trying to rearrange their face to make it look better than what it is. And it's not healthy at all. It's not healthy at all. And I think that trying to be incredibly beautiful, all for the sake of being beautiful, or for the sake of trying to get things out of being beautiful, I think is another really, really, really huge trait of toxic femininity that a lot of people do not scratch upon. More accurately, people do scratch upon it, and I'm glad they do. They just don't really label it as toxic femininity, Now, I could go the easy route and chat about borderline personality disorder, but I mean, even though borderlines are mostly found in the female sex, I don't think that that's really fair to label that as toxic femininity. I think borderlines are there. They're a danger to society that they are, but they kind of need their own video series to dissect. No, instead I want to tackle something that I don't think a lot of people consider to be a part of toxic femininity, if you even think about toxic femininity. And that is a complete and total disregard of the feelings of men. You didn't think I was going to pull that one out, but I did. I did pull it out. No, but seriously, I've noticed this with a lot of women, especially on the internet. Actually, especially recently, considering how I've made videos on incels and I've been looking at videos on incels and listening to them talking, I've been seeing ladies talk about incels and they just don't give a shit. In fact, interestingly enough, a lot of the times ladies will find the worst examples of incels, as most people do, to mock and ridicule them. And while incels are an extreme case, this is just a recent case I've seen. This is actually pretty general. Even with my own siblings, I have seen a total disregard for my feelings as a man. A lot of women do not think about, or if they do think about, don't care about the emotional weaknesses of men or the problems that men face. This is a huge staple that a lot of MGTOW MRAs have talked about for years, but no one has really labeled it as toxic femininity as I am doing now. And I'm mostly only doing it just to add a counter example or an equivalent to the toxic masculine bullshit feminists come up with. But the complete and total disregard of the feelings and emotions of men because women only seek to see the strength in men is a huge detriment to lots of relationships just in general. Lots of women just do not think about or even consider how even themselves are. Like a lot of women don't even take, this is an example, take into consideration how difficult talking to them can be, like trying to approach a woman can be. Now, for me personally, I've done it so many times. And first of all, here's the thing: I've gotten to a point where I don't think women are shit. I don't think they're bad. I don't think they're worthless. I just don't give a shit if some random woman doesn't like me. I've just gotten to that point. Like I don't care, man. Like if I'm not trying to make you the mother of my children, I really don't give a fuck what your opinion is. No, that's the point I'm at. But when I was younger, I can definitely speak on this. Going up and talking to women is kind of like really it was really hard growing up. Okay, like there's a lot of pressure and it was kind of scary going up and trying to start conversations with ladies and women. They don't care. They don't. A lot of women don't think about it. Some do. Some think about it, and some are nice about it. But a lot of women in our contemporary society do not consider the pressure that is trying to have a conversation or a meaningful conversation or even a favorable conversation as to where you don't look creepy, considering the fact that you're really nervous. Like a lot of women, they love to throw out, he's creepy, he's weird, he creeps me out, but they don't take into consideration like the nervousness that comes from, or the awkwardness that comes from talking to a stranger that you think is attractive. There's a lot of pressure and it's really difficult. A lot of women don't have that empathy, usually because they don't fucking approach men, so they don't even think about it, they don't even consider it. You know, they're the ones in the position of power, and thus they don't think about the difficulties that is going up and talking to them. You know, like I said, nowadays for me, I don't really put much stock in the opinion of women I don't know, but when I was younger, it definitely was a challenge. And while it's not a challenge for me, I can certainly acknowledge that it's actually still a challenge to a lot of men even now. And I think if you want to talk about toxic femininity, I think that's a really big one. A complete and total disregard of the feelings and emotions of men. Going up into approaching them is just one example, but there are many others I could go into, but I'm not. Playing the victim is a really good example of toxic femininity I find in a lot of white women. I know, I'm really racist. I don't like white women. I don't really, I mean, white women are they're just women, I don't really care, but it's a joke, okay? Don't take me seriously, man. White women are they're okay. But I have noticed a lot of victimhood status and passivity. Ooh, passivity is definitely a huge problem, or passive aggression is a huge problem with little white women. They are very passive-aggressive individuals. I tell you what, man, like, let's not even get into that. But playing the victim, again, I think a lot of MRAs and MGTOWs have pointed this out with feminism, and I think you could put that as definitely a really big or really good example of toxic femininity. Yeah, especially when you have very manipulative, psychotic women or borderline women that will play the victim, which I think, again, is actually kind of harkening back to closer to what Chris Ray Gun was trying to say in his clip. And I think I'm going to end the video there. I'm pretty sure if I actually put some thought into it, I could find some more examples of toxic femininity, but that's not really the point. What I really wanted to do is kind of point out that there are lots of toxic behaviors that we don't really get into and we don't really address. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something different. In the next video, I'm going to talk about all these different things I find in toxic femininity and explain why they're a thing. And you're probably wondering why. If you're wondering why, I'm going to tell you. It's because whenever I see lots of feminists talk about toxic masculinity, they next to never scratch that. They never ever talk about why toxic masculinity is a thing, and nor do they talk about ways and even try to curtail it or get around it. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to just point out bad behaviors in women. I want to talk about why they're a thing and possibly how we could change them. And it's not lost on me that most of the people who watch my videos are men, but I do still think that it'll be something interesting to ponder if you're a man, and I think it might be something you can get out if you're something you can get out of it if you're a woman. And so then when I'm done with that next video, I'll probably go back to talking about toxic masculinity, talk about why that's a thing and what we can do about that. And those are some videos that are coming in the future. So with that being said, I actually hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And if you did, man, go ahead and click the like button. Yeah, shoot, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.